I did appreciate your response yesterday.
Oh.
You know, very interesting that somebody would ask a question like that, but I was like, okay, let's find out the answer.
They must have seen him there.
I wanted to know this answer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was an interesting answer, too.
We now have 3 here, so we're going to get started. Okay. Ladies and gents, we're going to get started. Welcome to the Town Council January 23rd meeting. We are here to discuss the deliberative session coming up on February 6th. And we have Attorney Barton Mayer, who is the Town of Londonderry's counsel. We also have Assistant Town Moderator John Michaels over here, and the Town Manager. So what we're going to do tonight is we've invited Bart and John. Basically, we're here tonight to go over the rules of the cans and the cannot do for the deliberative session upcoming on February 6th, which is our first one since we went away from town meeting.
All right, and are we going to assign motions tonight as well?
Yes. Yep. So anyway, we're going to do the discussion first, I guess, and then we'll do the responsibilities for the articles towards the end. So with that said, Dave, why don't you bring us up to date on what we're going to do and why we're here?
Sure. Well, we have an hour, so the plan is to also turn this meeting into an information, a source of information for residents who want to learn about the deliberative process. It's fairly similar to what the school's been operating under for a number of years now, and also take the end of the meeting to review the warrant, and the council can assign responsibilities for moving items to the official ballot and making seconds, and also who will be the staff or council resources for each article.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So Bart, I guess from our point of view and from where we sit, this is new to us as far as the town side of it. Could you go a little bit into what a deliberative session now looks like as far as the town side goes?
Well, the first session of the annual meeting this year, which is known as the deliberative session, is going to be much the same as we've all come to know it over the past years and what we've become accustomed to. There will be a discussion of the warrant articles, debate, and each article can be amended. The warrant articles that may be amended with 2 important limitations. The first is that warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law cannot be amended except in terms of numbers. So if there's a specific question on the warrant that's prescribed by the statute, we cannot amend the form of that question, but we can amend numbers. For example, if it said put 50% into a fund and we wanted 100 or vice versa. That actually is the same as our previous meetings. We're limited in that context. The second one is we may not amend an article so as to eliminate the subject matter, which is what the statute says. So you can't simply eliminate the purchase of the truck. What you can do is amend the amount that's being appropriated to 0, for example, but you can't eliminate the subject matter of the article. Other than that, you can amend, and then at the end of the discussion and amendment process, the article will then move to the official ballot for the second session to be voted on by the citizens. Otherwise, I don't think there's a terrible amount of change that's going to take place other than you don't have the final vote at the deliberative session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Bart, I have a question. And it's with regards to collective bargaining. All right, so I'm getting 2 different answers to this question. Let me tell you what the 2 answers are, and then maybe we can go from there. One answer I'm getting is that you can amend, for example, would be Article 14 I'll talk about. You can amend Article 14, and then if passed by the majority of the people in the deliberative session, with that amendment, that is what would go to the voters to be voted on.
That is correct.
Right. Now, I'm hearing a second argument, in which I'm trying to get an answer to, is because we are a charter town and not an SB2 town, we just have a charter with a deliberative, the article cannot be amended. So I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, I could say that both answers are correct. I'm not sure how helpful that would be.
Well, okay, so that like is clearly muddy.
Okay, let me simplify the matter. The article can be amended, but if there's an amendment, it means that the article has been rejected, and the parties must be returning to the bargaining table to work out the differences in the collective bargaining agreement. So it can be
Under
amended,
both-
but that constitutes a rejection of the article.
So then, once it's amended, it does not go to the ballot.
Well,
Because it's been rejected.
It can go to the, no. All articles as amended go on the official ballot.
Okay.
But the effect of the amendment is to essentially terminate the article. Then it means that it did not pass.
Okay, now the other argument is
Hold
that...
on, but that doesn't make sense. Because
Right.
how can it go there, be voted on, say it passes 100% to nothing? You're telling me that means nothing?
Because the contract.
But again, let me emphasize.
You understand why I'm confused?
Well,
I am
not really, because this is no different than what would have occurred at the deliberative session last year if it were amended and passed as amended.
Budgetary town meeting.
The budgetary town meeting could have amended the article
Oh, okay.
at the meeting, and then when you call me and say, well, it passed, said, means you have to go back to the table, because the voters vote on the cost items in a collective bargaining agreement proposal. That's what's being presented here. If it's amended in any way, that means that the citizens are rejecting the proposal reached by the parties, that is the council and the bargaining unit, the union.
I think it's pretty clear that nobody understood we could amend
At
the
town meeting.
contract at town meeting and then vote on it. I think that's pretty clear that nobody knew
No,
that.
nobody did.
But
Okay.
you need to understand that if you do that, it is tantamount to rejecting the article and sending the parties back to the table. Now, they might go back with the guidance in hand that this is what the voters were willing to live with and
Sure.
negotiate from that standpoint.
Right, I mean, if
Right.
it comes in at 100%, they say, the will of the people said that they supported this, what are we negotiating? The small, say there's 250 people, so 2,600 people come to vote, say that's the number. 250 people show up to deliberative session. They want to change in the contract, they don't support it. It kicks back, the will of the voters is to support the contract. You're in a negotiating standoff, because they're going to say, well, they supported our contract.
No,
They didn't.
No, understand, it's the amended article that always goes on the official ballot. So
Okay.
you're always
Right.
going to have the
So they
same
might have
answer for
amended
the-
the
Clear
article
now.
to
I got it.
0.
Okay, I
Now,
understand.
the second part to my question is, you cannot amend it at deliberative session because we're a charter town, not an SB2 town.
No, that is not correct. You're still voting on the cost items. The town meeting is a budgetary town meeting and has the right to vote on appropriations. Consequently, regardless of whether it's a charter town or otherwise, the voters have the right to consider cost items and reject them.
Okay, so...
No,
right.
don't get confused here. It's
I'm not
really
confused.
relatively simple.
So, is that how we're interpreting the law, or is that how the Attorney General's office interprets the law, or is that how the legislature wrote the law?
I believe that's how the Supreme Court has applied the law.
So that's how the New Hampshire State Supreme Court, has this been challenged?
Not specifically, but it was
on lawsuit,
discussed in the context of another case.
And you believe what they said is that you could go ahead and do that?
Yes,
I just don't want any confusion when we get there on February 6th.
I understand that.
Because, I mean, I don't know what people are going to do, but let's just ask the question and be very sure. Okay.
100%.
One of the things, Dad, I asked the same question on the school side, because the same issue goes, got the same answer. So there are two lawyers that were giving the same answer.
Tom, do you want to give an answer too? We'll have 3 lawyers.
Oh, wait. He who speaks
You know,
last
I mean,
wins.
I'm sorry I'm drilling into it, but this is, I mean, it's an important question.
Right.
But let's just make sure, before we end the discussion, that everyone understands what's being said here. You have the choice of voting for the article, voting against the article, or amending the article. If you vote against, if you vote to amend, that constitutes a rejection, because the amended article then goes to the official ballot. And if the voters vote in favor of it, nevertheless, it's been rejected because it's been changed. And they only have the right to vote on the cost items as proposed. If they amend it, they haven't approved the cost items as proposed.
And amended by majority vote at the deliberative session.
Correct.
It fails, it goes the way it is.
Yes, to the ballot.
Okay.
But just to be clear, those set of circumstances apply to proposed collective bargaining agreements only.
Yes.
So I don't want to be getting the impression that if you amend some other article, it's constitutional reduction. It's only for collective bargaining agreements.
Right, we focused here on this part of the discussion is just on collective bargaining agreement articles.
No, I mean, I've been asked multiple times and everything, and, and I have a point of view on it, and, I believe we did a good job here, and it's probably the best contracts we've had in 25 years. So I just wanted to make sure that I clearly understood the rules of engagement.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
One of the questions I had was, someone had wrote down, taking notes, what was the process for a written ballot procedure? And you know how in the past we've had the secret ballot? What's the process for that?
Hasn't changed at all. A written request
Still
for a
need
secret
5
ballot,
signatures of people
5
there.
signatures must go to the moderator before the vote, at which time then the moderator can call out to the meeting and let the citizens know that a secret ballot has been requested.
Or, one other circumstance, or when 7 people request a written vote after the vote is announced, but before the moderator moves on to the new business. So you can do it ahead of time, takes 5. Moderator can go and announce, vote is, 100 for, 99 against. At that time, before the moderator moves on, if 7 people at that point make a written request, then it,
Okay.
there'll be a ballot.
How entertaining.
Just so we're clear for everybody, because we used to have a different procedure on the school side, any number of people that show up have the right to amend any article. There's no quorum on the town side.
That would be correct.
In fact, there's no quorum on the school side
either,
anymore.
Right.
Okay. And
If 3 show up and the vote's 2-1, that's what it is.
that's what it is. And then any articles that are amended, as you said, go to the final warrant. The people at the deliberative session don't vote on that, it just moves.
After the discussion is closed and the article is complete, it moves to the official ballot as amended, if amended.
And what we would probably do is follow the same procedure that's followed all along. I go and say, or Cindy goes and says, and now the article's moved on to the ballot for March 13th. Somebody typically gets up and says, I move to restrict reconsideration, and that stops anybody from bringing it up again at the same meeting.
So that still applies.
That still applies.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so there's not much of a change that way.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Do you have that other list?
I don't.
Okay, so with regards to Article 4, which is the town operating budget, if someone comes in and makes, it's a bottom line budget, so if they were to make a motion to change that number up or down, they would only focus on the bottom line number, not particular items within the budget, yes or no? So the budget, so I got $26 million.
Well,
I'm going to come up and ask for an adjustment to that number to $25 million. I'm not going to, or do I come up and say, I want $1 million and I want you to take it out of police department?
Well, the form of the question is prescribed by the statute, and the statutes make clear you can change the numbers, but not the form of the question. So that it would be directly at the number, the bottom
Because
line
it's a bottom
appropriation.
line, yeah.
Yeah. Also, you need to keep in mind that if you take $50 out of a line item that's $100, it's still a line item that's open and available to transfer funds
To
during
other
the
lines.
fiscal year if that becomes necessary, but we then get a little beyond the scope of tonight's discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Some people have said that if you zero out a line item in a budget, that actually has an effect.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so in the operating budget, if, for example, I'm trying to think of something small. For example, the zoning board, if we say we zero out the zoning board, I think it's about $40,000. Then no funds could be expended on the zoning board.
That would be correct. And that's why I hesitated about your question. The form of the question is prescribed by law, but at the same time, the statutes governing budgets specifically refer to the fact that one may zero out a line item, and therefore no funds can be appropriated for that purpose. So I'm inclined to believe if someone moved to amend the article by reducing the number from 26 million to $25,750,000 and take $250,000 out of fill in the blank, whatever line item you want, which would render it a zero, I think they could do that, and it's instructive, and it's certainly something the statutes provide for.
But again, that, what it comes down to ultimately is that on voting day, on election day, that when people go into the ballot, at least there is a default budget that people can still vote on.
Yes, and or the budget as amended. There'll be both numbers there, so that people are at least aware of them. And that is one change, is that if the citizens reject the budget, then the default budget controls, which is calculated according to a formula provided for in the statute.
And people aren't actually there's not two choices on the ballot. It's
No,
just-
no, no.
There's just yes and no on Article 4.
Correct.
And if there's more no's than yeses, the default is in effect.
That would be correct.
Okay. And I read this somewhere, and I'm not sure if it applies to the operating budget or to certain warrant articles. Can people move to amend based on a percentage, or do they have to use a specific amount of money? Can they
Well,
say,
depends on the article, but
the operating budget by 10%, for example?
well, I'm sure the moderator would facilitate the discussion, say, for those interested, 10% is equivalent to X amount of dollars.
$2,674,000.
So you have to use a specific amount?
Well, I think you need, yes, because ultimately, when it goes to the ballot, you need to know what the number is. So if you say 10%, we need to know what the number is. If it's $26 million budget, we need to know that it's reducing it by $2.6 million, which would then go on as amended, $2.6 million less than that provided in the article.
So people, if they want to make that kind of amendment, have to come up with a specific number or not?
There's a question of, if somebody comes up to Cindy or I and says, look, I want to, lower something by, 20%, we will help them write and say, 20% of that article happens to be so many dollars. We will put it into a dollar amount because we ultimately have to have a dollar amount in the end. So, we would help somebody rephrase it so it actually was a dollar amount.
Thank you.
Because on all of these, not only the budget but everything else, you end up with a dollar, to reduce the, some fund by 50%, the ballot is going to say, it's going to be a dollar amount, so we've got to put that in. So I'd make sure that the amount was in dollars.
So there should be no surprises. We operate as we always have in the deliberative session. We deliberate. If citizens wish to amend, we amend. And then ultimately, the amended article goes on the ballot for the final vote that we're used to taking in our past sessions. Now it takes place in March.
So no one can bring to the deliberative session a new warrant article?
Nope, it's just the same rule that the warrant must distinctly state all the business to be taken up at the deliberative session. So you cannot add anything. And in fact, that is one of the controls on town meetings that's been there and remains, which is nobody can be surprised by the content of the warrant.
But if somebody, there's the catch-all in the end and other business that can come before, so, depending on how the moderator chooses to do it, if somebody comes and wants to speak about something, within certain bounds, we allow somebody to, to speak at the end, but it has no practical
Binding effect.
binding effect. And we make sure that anybody knows that ahead of time,
Just to catch you up We pretty much have asked Bart on what are the differences between the town meeting and deliberative session. There really aren't many. Procedurally wise, everything's still really pretty much the same. Motions to reconsider, motions to restrict. You still need 5 people to do a secret ballot. John was saying you need 7 to do a reconsideration after the fact, after the vote's been announced. Basically, because it's a bottom line budget, people have to, if they want to make an amendment, they need to make it as in a dollar amount. You want to reduce X by X out of X. Let's see, what else? Contracts, people can amend the amounts. If they do amend an amount and the vote passes, basically that means the contract is null and void, and the parties will have to go back to the table. Even if it passes on election day, it still isn't going to matter, because the language of the contract was changed. So therefore...
We advise
Yeah,
the
well-
body of that.
Yeah, we would go and, Cindy or I, when the article comes up, would go and say, understand that the effect of the amendment, like on collective bargaining, the effect of the amendment is that if the amendment passes here, it goes and is voted on and has the effect of voting no. So we would explain that, to somebody what it is. It's just like the same thing we had an earlier discussion of, if you're cutting the budget, cutting $1 million out of the budget, we'd explain that that's a bottom line cut, and not, if you said take it all out of the police department, say, well, it's going to be a bottom line item, except, and the one exception is that if you zero out a line item, if you say police department 0, then, as Bart was explaining, that means you're not going to fund your police department. Well, actually, something else would probably happen there. But the concept is, use it the zoning board of adjustment. If you zero them out, then they get no money. But anything short of that.
Now, what advice would we give the body, for example, if they either wanted to amend the collective bargaining agreement, which would effectively nullify it, or if they wanted to vote no on it, same thing? What do we advise them about that?
The effect of it?
The effect of reverting back to the old contract, or whatever was negotiated now is lost, and we go back to
what I would do as moderator, say, you have to understand what this is, and Bart, would you explain the legal effect of what it is? That's what we typically do. Is when we get something like that, we ask Bart to tell the voters what.
If we gain some concessions in the agreement, and the agreement is null and void,
Right.
then we lose those concessions, and it reverts back to the way it was. Do we tell the people, the body, that?
Well, I wouldn't be prepared to comment tonight, as I haven't reviewed the content of each collective bargaining agreement to know whether you have what they call evergreen clauses in the contract, and I'd want to see exactly what the language is, and we
Are
can
you
work that
shaking
out.
your head
in
yes, there are
anticipation.
evergreen clauses in the contract?
Which-
Yet in the new contract, we do not.
No, they're all evergreen. Evergreen simply is a continuation of,
The same benefits they have today in their current contract.
that's right, with no pay increases,
With no pay
with
increases.
no
Yeah.
cost of living, no steps.
But they would still have all of any other concessions they had given up.
Any other, the health coverage would be the same, the dental insurance would be the same, vacation would be the
It would
same.
revert back to the old contract.
That's correct.
Right. So we probably want to be able to be,
Right.
right, gotcha.
And if Dave wants to be the one, but, the moderator would defer so that people clearly understood what they're doing, and, whether it be a budget article or, a contract article, we make sure that people understood what they were doing and where.
With regard to a collective bargaining agreement, the only thing that can be proposed to be amended at deliberative session is the amount of funding, correct? We couldn't negotiate and say they shouldn't have 2 weeks of vacation, they should have 1 week or something.
I would submit to you that the only questions before the meeting are the cost items, and that's the only thing we should be dealing with at the meeting.
Okay.
So if someone wanted to go to the collective bargaining agreement as an example of an amendment, they would make an amendment, sorry, I'm looking for it, that we would eliminate, $756 in FY 13, FY 14, and FY 15, whatever those dollar numbers are that are stated in the amendment. Okay.
Okay. So the bottom line on this is, at the end of the deliberative session, there's still going to be 17 articles presented to the voters.
Precisely.
They may all say, we're not going to spend a dime,
But they go to the voters.
but they go to the voters.
Because all we've accomplished so far is moved them, discussed them, debated them, and amended them, but we haven't adopted them. That has to go to the meeting, or the second part of the meeting, which is the official ballot vote.
But understand that one of the things that a deliberative session can do is you take some article, for example, Article 5, appropriating funds for capital reserve funds. Okay. The article has to be there, but if you effectively zero it out or put in $100, the deliberative session has basically voted no, and the voters can't raise the sum again. So one of the things that a deliberative session, can do is basically kill items. In short, where they can effectively kill them.
By way of,
It'll still be on the ballot, but it'll be effectively killed.
by way of
But the same could
zeroing
be-
out the
But the
items.
same could have been said of town meeting.
Correct.
With the reverse of the election day ballot,
Yeah.
people still can vote. So, all
Yeah.
right, all right. I'm just
yeah,
making,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, so, in the traditional town meeting, it would have been killed on the spot.
Yep.
Right. This way just kills it a little slower. But the catch is,
Death by taxes?
yeah, but the catch is, if people who are trying to understand the process have to understand that while they say a deliberative session, well, geez, you can't do much. While you can't create something new, you can kill it for all practical purposes.
No, there was a lot of controversy last year, and I believe the legislation took action on it, but
Right.
about the amendment of articles that some towns were doing is to say, to amend it to say, see if the town shall, and then
That's
stop it, the article right there. That's not allowed anymore, right?
And we had discussed that briefly, that the legislature amended the law to make it clear that you may not eliminate the subject matter. But if there were to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a given sum to fix my road, you could put 0 in that line item rather than the number that I had petitioned for, in which case, as John's suggesting, it would effectively kill it, but it would still be on the same subject matter.
All right, so I had a question. So Article 5, we'll use John's example. All right, so that's a capital reserve account for heavy equipment, fire trucks, and highway trucks. Right now, we're trying to appropriate $510,000, okay? So if someone comes in and says, I'd like to reduce that by $200,000, and it passes, does that mean that the article fails here, or will $310,000 go before the voters?
And go before the voters.
310 goes to the voters.
Okay,
Right.
perfect. That's all I wanted to know.
The only items that effectively fail at this level is if they're zeroed out, or if the collective bargaining agreements are amended.
At all.
Right.
Right.
By $1, we'll do it.
Right.
Okay, got it. All right.
But that gets to one of the things, why people should show up at the meetings.
Right.
Because, as in everything, you have to learn the rules of the game. The rule of this game.
There's a cause and effect of what people are voting on.
Yeah.
A very big one at some point.
If an amendment, a proposed amendment is made to modify the language of an article, in whose judgment? Is it in the moderator's judgment to allow certain amounts of language change and not allow other language changes?
Well, I think there are two things. There's a question of what the voters say. If the voters all sitting in the room, decide to put all sorts of things in. They have the power to put things in. The question is, what's the effect, later? If we're dealing with fire trucks, and they say, we're not going to do fire trucks, we're going to do a dump truck for Llanos. We can tell them, if you do this, you can't go and do it. We can tell them, but it's the old rule between they have a lot of power and what's the effect of what they did. I think council would go and say, if it's a fire truck, gotta stay as a fire truck.
So the language can be amended, but it has to be in the judgment of the moderator that it doesn't fill in the blank for me.
No, I think that you need to use the language of the statute to be very careful, because you could easily move to other thoughts.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, the statute says you may not delete the subject matter. And so the moderator will certainly be aware of, if someone says, we're not going to buy a fire truck, we're going to buy a dump truck, that's changing the subject matter to something else. And the question on the table is the disposition of a fire truck, not a milk truck.
So would that constitute deleting the language?
I would argue that you couldn't do it because the citizens aren't adequately warned of the content. But mind you, that is not something that's changed as a result of us choosing the SB2 form of town meeting. That's always been the case.
No.
The moderator would not allow you to change the subject matter of an article.
I would go and say, I will not accept that because that violates the law.
Well, let's use Article 9 as an example.
Okay?
It's an article to fund 4 additional firefighters. If someone wanted to alter that to 3 additional firefighters or 5 additional firefighters, would that be allowed?
I think it'd be fine.
Fine. It wouldn't be changing, it wouldn't be deleting the subject matter, it would merely be changing the amount of the appropriation,
Okay.
which the citizens always have had an opportunity to do.
Okay.
But to contrast that, no one could amend it to say 4 additional police officers.
No.
Correct.
Correct.
Perfect.
Okay.
Could you add language to an article to say that, what's the language there? Part of it would, to authorize use of the June 30 fund balance in the amount of X?
I don't see any reason why you couldn't amend that component of the article. It's neither prescribed by law, the form, and it involves an amount or a source of funding. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that.
Would that even apply to Article 4? Because I know Article 4 is by statute. That's the operating budget.
Well, I don't think it would apply there, because when you go to set your tax rate, the Department of Revenue Administration will certainly be looking at how much money you have on hand, how much is they prescribe under their regulations, and what they recommend to be withheld for contingencies and for abatements and things. So,
For example, what if they said, I wanted to increase the budget by 200, the operating budget by 200,000, and then utilize 200,000 in June 30th fund balance of 200,000? So it basically would be a zero effect.
yeah, but I think that that would be the case anyway, to the extent $200,000 is in fact available. If it isn't available, then
taxes.
that wouldn't be happening in the Department of Revenue Administration. Well, it wouldn't be happening if you just didn't have it even at the town meeting, even if people say it. So you've got to be very careful about articulating something that way that really isn't plausible or possible, but very attractive.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the cable division thing? Article
11.
No, 10, we'll use ours. No, that's not. Article 11 is ours? Yeah, Article 11. So Article 11 is establish a capital reserve fund for the cable division. Currently, what the council is recommending is a $200,000 addition into the fund, establishing a fund for the cable studio. I have a feeling there's going to be a group of people there that are going to want to tweak it to what they feel is adequate.
And that's their prerogative. And
Absolutely, I'm
and
not
then-
saying it isn't,
and-
I'm just trying to find out, when we're going through this
what's going to
Which
happen.
article are you talking about?
Article 11.
11.
Well, I mean, for example, what would happen is like on any article, okay, they would say, we want, someone would come forward, they say, we want to make an amendment to make it $400,000.
Sure.
Other people would get up, maybe even including yourself, and say, okay, this is the thought behind it, this is how we're handling it, and this is the explanation and the reason why. And you may turn and say, Dave, would you have anything to add to that? And then you got to let the people vote.
Yeah.
But that's the way every one
I'm
of them
just trying to
would
make
happen.
sure this is, what we're doing is we can change the percentage of, each article, all these things are up for that. We can change the percentage of what the number is, bottom line.
Yeah.
On
I mean, someone
capital
may,
reserves, on
someone
the
may
cable
come in
line,
on Article
every
2
line.
and say, we want to make it $1 million, we don't agree with the 500,000. That could happen too.
Right.
John, will you be accepting amendments verbally or only in writing?
We prefer them in writing, but if, we will reduce it to writing, but if somebody comes and says, I move that we change, say, that Article 11 from 200,000 to 300,000, the amendment's really simple, but we write it down. We always write down the amendment, because otherwise we screw it up, quite frankly. We want to keep it written.
Okay.
Perhaps, I don't want to give out any secrets, you guys, but, we have forms at courthouses, for motions and things like that, that are almost all filled out except for your name and the docket number, but maybe we could do that for the deliberative session, have just a blank form and fill in the blanks.
What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Might as well, just in case.
Maybe Tom could swipe some from the courthouse for just for copies.
Give them a free there, that's easy.
Way down.
Stop by.
I can send you a little
Fill the
form.
names in.
Yeah, I'm trying to save a buck, Tom.
Make something up.
We have 5 minutes after this.
Not a-
We set aside the last 15 minutes.
And by-
Assignments.
Just so everybody's clear, that Article 12, for example, is by citizens petition. That too can be amended.
Oh, yes. There's no limitation on the right of the citizens to amend articles simply because they're by petition. The question is whether they're prescribed by law, which would preclude us, or whether we're changing just the numbers in them, which we can do without any problem.
Well, it sounds to me like that the deliberative session, it has its benefits, it has some drawbacks, but ultimately, it sounds pretty much like the same meeting, but the only difference is we'll be able to vote on things at the end of it.
Yeah, and as John has mentioned, everyone needs to understand that the deliberative session remains important and can have an impact, ultimately, on what transpires in town. It's not simply a matter now of everything goes to the ballot and we don't have to attend. We need to be participating because they can be amended at the deliberative session, just like they always have.
Which ultimately can change your tax rate. Up or down.
And there's no quorum, so it could be 10 people.
Right.
And if any things are amended, the Budget Committee and the Town Council has to re-vote on their
They
recommendations.
have that right to do so, yes.
So we've scheduled a meeting for Thursday, the 9th, after the deliberative session, to give the council an opportunity to review and make any adjustments. Then we'll post the final warrant, and we'll send the report off to printers.
Okay. All right, it's,
Anybody out in the public?
I wasn't going to open it to the public. We don't have much time, by quarter of, I have to
I
open
guess
it.
suggestions, you may want to just go through and make your assignments, so at least we have that done by 7 p.m.
Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is, we're going to do our assignments, and if we have enough time, we'll go to the public and we'll do that. So, all right, let's go through. So Article 2, we have the bond issue for highway reconstruction. So who wants to do the motion to move it to the ballot?
I think we ought to give all the motions to Joe.
Sandbagging. I'm very familiar with that. I've been sandbagged once or twice myself.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, John's on that, okay. And the second?
I'll do a second.
All right, Tom. All right, Article 3, Expendable Maintenance Trust. Tom Frida?
Sure.
And just give Joe the second.
Joe?
I think he can handle it.
Yeah. Second. Okay, Article 4, the budget. Motion to move.
Well, it's not our meeting, so you can make motions too, Sean.
Yes, I will do that one. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, Article 5, deliberative, appropriate capital replacement, all right, that's that article.
Capital
Okay.
reserve funds.
Yep, so we got the first one, who are we doing with the motion on that?
I'll do that one.
Right, Tom D. Second, Tom F.
I'll do it.
Okay. Article 6, Fire Department Capital Reserve Equipment Fund.
I'll take it.
John,
I'll second.
Tom. Okay, Article 7, Special Revenue Account.
I'll do it.
F.
All kidding aside, we probably should give some to
Give
Joe.
to Joe, yeah. And I'll second.
Oh, you want Joe to do that one?
Yeah.
Joe. Okay, let's see, Article 8, Sewer Fund. That's a really glamorous one. I'll take it. Can I get a second?
Have Joe second it.
Well,
I'm just
that
rotating
really
names in my head.
stinks, yeah. All right, Article 9, Fire Department Personnel and Staffing Levels.
I'll motion it.
All right, John. Second,
I'll second.
Tom D. Okay, Article 10, that's the luck tax discussion.
Why is Janos presenting?
Usually,
Article
historically,
10?
with,
9.
I'll do 10 for Mr. Hooley.
No, I was just asking Dave, why is Janos presenting Article 9?
is that sewer fund?
No,
Oops.
Fire department.
That will be corrected.
I was going to ask you that. unless-
Well, he probably has a point of view on it.
Yeah. You can give me your money.
He'd say, don't give it to them, give it to me.
firefighters will work on the street.
All right, I need a second on Article 10.
I'll do it.
Do you want that one? Okay, Tom. Okay. John's going to do it. All right, Article 11, that's the Established Capital Reserve for the Cable Equipment Council one.
I'll do it.
Tom. Second on that one?
I'll do it.
Tom F. Tom D. Okay. Article 12,
Why don't you give this to Joe?
yeah, we'll give that to Joe. We'll give the next 5 to Joe, how's that? I'm just kidding. Second, I'll do the second on that one. All right, Article 13 is the,
I'll put
Ask
my...
me.
Yeah, I'll do it.
John, okay. I can do the second. All right. Article 14. And the second?
Joe.
Joe. Okay, Article 15.
So that would mean, okay, so far,
I'll do it.
that means, yeah, either you, and then Sean can second
I'll do the
it.
second,
I think we actually have a rotation, though.
right? Yeah, we're pretty good at motion. Almost like we know what we're doing.
Tom Frieda's going to present the motion.
On 15.
Article 16, cost of special town meeting.
I'll do it.
That's John. I'll grab the second. Article 17, establish a roadway maintenance trust. We'll give that to Tom Frieda. And Joe will be the second. And Article 18, redistricting commission. We need a motion for that?
Who's presenting that one? Is that Janos?
The petition is...
For the bond?
17, Article 17, I mean.
Oh, 17.
That one looks like a...
Oh, yeah.
He can, or any of the councils can make the presentations on these if you choose.
Oh, the roadway, yeah, Janos isn't gonna make that. He doesn't believe we're correct in that, so. He's leaving that to us, so we can make that pitch.
All right,
Article
so
18, redistricting.
I don't care. I mean, you know, let's wrap it up, I'll do it.
All right, John?
You should second.
Huh?
Second, you.
Yeah. And then I'll take the second on it.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
All right,
We have for
Dave?
Article 10, second.
One of the things here, we're not actually moving, we're not moving the article to the official ballot. We're, if anything, it's a motion to take up and discuss the article, you know, a motion to...
Just the formality of it.
No, I'm
Can I
I'm
simply
talking
just
about the
say,
formality.
I'll motion Article 11, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
that's it. But I think it's more of the nature You know, I move we discuss article whatever, because it's, we never really,
Motions to discuss.
Motion to discuss. Okay. All right, so I guess we can open up to the public. We can take questions for about 10 minutes. So anybody out there that has any questions? A strange man. Could you state your name for the record, please, sir?
I think it's going by Joe Smith these days.
Mike Brown, 5 Carousel Court. It's hard to resist when you say any questions.
It's okay.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, can I direct a question to the attorney?
Absolutely.
Which one?
The town
The guy's
council.
getting paid.
Counsel for the town.
We're
Bart,
turning an attorney's time.
if I heard you correctly, were we able to, could we have amended labor agreements under the old form of government?
You can amend, you could have amended
Could we have amended them under traditional town meeting that we had?
collective bargaining agreement articles. Yes, I
Okay.
believe so.
21 years in town, 11 years going, never heard that before. Anyone else?
Nor have I.
Anyone else?
That's what we set up here.
Well,
We
I
did
think-
not understand.
How did that get missed?
I'm a surprise a minute, is that?
If I were a reporter, that's my lead for
No,
tomorrow.
but I think, isn't it true that if you amend them, that it renders them null and void?
Well, as long as we understand the ramifications, he's only
I
asking
always
me
do.
whether it can be amended.
You're the
But
only one, Tom.
Anytime you change a collective bargaining agreement at a meeting, it renders it, it's null and void. It's like
What I'm-
voting it down.
What I'm saying is, I don't think anyone knew you could amend it. Anyways, thank you for establishing that. That's an excellent data point. For the moderator, if I could, once an amendment is properly submitted and motioned
Yep.
and seconded,
Right.
and discussion takes place,
Yep.
does that motion and that amendment have to come to a vote as is, or can someone else stand up and amend that amendment? Do they go to completion, or can they be changed on the floor before the vote?
so it depends on what the amendment is. I mean, generally, you like to take one up and do the, you know, take it up or down, and then do the next one.
So let's say it's just a straightforward, simple, I make a motion to amend Article X by $100,000.
We'd vote that up
Someone
or down.
seconds,
Yeah.
and a discussion takes place. Can someone else stand up and then change that again before?
No, I wouldn't take it.
Okay.
I'd say, you know, we're going to vote the 100 up and down.
Okay.
You want to go 50, then we'll
Okay.
do the 50
All
one.
right. Last question I have, it relates to the operating budget, and again, it kind of relates to what the attorney was saying. Can an amendment to the operating budget warrant article, specific, even in the form of a dollar amount, then specifically direct where that dollar amount should either be reduced or increased at a department or line item level? I still am not sure whether that was a yes or a no. It's critical, that one's critical.
Yeah, and I confess that the statutes are ambiguous on the point, because the statute is very clear that you may not amend the form of the question if it's prescribed by statute.
Okay.
This one is.
Okay.
However, I'm also aware of the fact that the statutes recognize that an item can be zeroed out, including a line item in a budget.
Right.
Consequently, I have to reconcile those two positions.
Right.
I would say that there is no purpose in taking a certain amount out of a line item, if for no other reason than the money can be transferred from one line item to another. But if there were an effort to place a zero in a particular line item,
Yeah.
then I think that we'd have to accommodate that in some way, unless it was the legal budget line item.
Yeah, I was speaking more I was speaking more I was speaking more specifically to the, not the zero example, but someone saying, I make a motion to reduce the operating budget or increase it by X amount, and I want it to go from there or to there.
I suppose it's possible, but I just am trying to think of the,
Yeah.
where it has meaning, given the fact that it's not something that binds anyone. The council, all boards of selectmen, and throughout the state have the authority to transfer from one line item to another
Okay.
anyway.
Wouldn't our
Okay.
charter still allow the town manager to manage the funds accordingly as he
Yes,
sees fit
that's
to run the
what we're
business?
saying is that
So it
if you
wouldn't-
say, I want to take $50 out of this account and move it to another account,
Like to the legal budget?
we would always hope. But in the end, it's not a binding
Well, then that's,
vote.
as one attendee at this meeting, I think that last point needs to be made crystal clear. In other words, if that kind of a motion is allowed, I think it needs to be crystal clear to the folks that that does not have to be acted upon by the policymaking
Yeah,
body.
we'll go.
of
Well,
the
that's
town.
why
We'll
we're
go-
here.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
We'll go
actually-
make sure that we'll get an explanation for
To
it.
Tom's point, because I just asked him, I said, the same thing wasn't allowed at town meeting. You can do that, you can make a motion, but it's not going to do anything. It's not enforceable.
It's not enforceable.
I understand.
Our charter
It's a
prescribes
bottom line budget.
that they can still.
You
I mean,
may,
it's like amending the collective bargaining agreement. You know, we've never done it because it never makes sense to do it. I mean, why would, if you're going to do it, why not just vote the article down if you want to render it,
Yeah.
you know. it's
last question, and I appreciate the opportunity, relates to the operating budget again. Can someone amend the dollar amount of the operating budget up or down and specifically direct that it be used to keep staffing at a certain level, or reduce staffing or increase staffing? Can they make amendments that directly affect staffing, or is that also still a policy decision at the end of the
I
day?
think ultimately it's the same answer.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Tom?
Just reading from the ability about zeroing out amounts. It says, this provision applies only to line items on the posted budget, not on the big book, because you post a budget.
We post each
Which may be
department in the operating
About
budget.
20
20 or
So
30 lines, right?
You couldn't say, I want to zero out a position, for example, pick the clerk's office, for example. You couldn't do that, because if the clerk says $450,000, for it to be zero, you'd have to eliminate the 450?
That's my understanding.
That's right.
Okay.
So someone couldn't say, I want to eliminate all overtime in the fire department. They have to eliminate the entire fire department.
You couldn't go to that big white book there, pick a line that says the assistant clerk position, for example, and zero that out. You have to eliminate the entire clerk's department in the posted budget.
Interesting.
But it's still not enforceable, because you have an operating budget that doesn't delineate those
Well,
things.
But
as
on
I
the
said,
posted
we'd have to find a way to reconcile this situation where they're zeroing out something as opposed to a futile effort at saying we want to manage the individual line items and who's hired and who's not and whether there's a raise or things like that. So that doesn't have much significance because the charter voted on by the citizens leaves that prerogative to the council, as does the statute. So if we focus exclusively on zeroing a particular line item out, as Thomas suggested, from the book he's reading, you know, they could zero out a particular line item, but I don't think it's feasible, given the nature of the line items, the amount involved, and the subject matter involved.
Wouldn't the effect be to lower the operating budget by that amount of that line item, and that's it? Let's say that line item was a $400,000 line item. You'd lower the operating budget by that, but it wouldn't mean that that particular line item had to be zeroed out. It would mean that the operating budget would be lessened by that amount of that line item.
Well, I think the statutes still retain the right of the citizens, or provided to the citizens, the right to zero out a line item. Now, that might not be feasible in the budget that's presented because there are certain things that you're required to do under the law, and there are other things that people might find desirable. So to get in there and manage one particular item would probably be impossible. The only contingency I'm really leaving open that we need to reconcile is the ability to say zero on a line item for one particular item that no one wants,
I don't think we can get it in.
which may not even be an issue.
I figure
Given the
since the only things that can be zeroed out are the things that are offered in this document. I mean, if you don't offer a clerk's budget in here, then you can't zero it out because it's not up for vote.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain, Tom, is that specifically, the statute recognizes the ability to reach down into a budget and zero out a line item. And I'd like to pick something that wouldn't offend anybody, that might be a very small line item.
Budget committee has a buck.
Gasoline.
Well, no,
We don't need any of that.
some people want a new soccer field. The council is persuaded that's a good idea, and there's a line item in the budget, 17444 is the line item, and it says new soccer field. People could zero that out, reach down and zero that out, and that would mean no money spent for the new soccer field. But the problem is that that really depends on the budget that's actually posted and where that amount is. I doubt that it might be so specific on the one that's posted along with the warrant. And that's what
That's pretty
Tom was
specific.
trying to work through.
It's like 25 line items,
There's 25 line items.
something like that.
Yeah.
proposed,
See, that's the point.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, seeing that there's another meeting right after this, unless there's any further business, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Mr. Smil.
Sure, just a very short one.
Sure.
I wouldn't do this, but Mike said that I had to come up here so that he wouldn't be the only one. And all I do is have a suggestion that I hope will expedite the meeting. And it could be done either on the paper warrant that people get when they come into the meeting, or it could be done on the slides that are shown, for each article as it comes up. But could we somehow highlight either the language that can or cannot be changed? What I'm trying to do is avoid useless people, earnest people, coming up trying to amend things that they cannot amend because it's statutorily prescribed. I don't know if it can be done on the actual warrant itself, but certainly it could be done on a slide, and you could say, here's the things you can change, and the numbers are highlighted.
Like statutorily can't be amended.
Right, just to preclude a false start.
Right, and also a lengthy discussion about absolutely nothing.
Well, you can't preclude.
We don't ever do that on this board, never.
I think Bart wants to take them under advisement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing.
So, do you want to just comment? So, under advisement, basically?
No, I just was observing that I wouldn't want to be the individual assigned the responsibility of highlighting the sections that can and cannot be amended. That doesn't sound like a very attractive proposition. I mean, there are some words that can be, some words that can't be, some that don't have any meaning at all, and it encourages amendments that, or could encourage amendments that have no meaning anyway. So, it's a
All
little
right.
trickier than that.
Well, thanks for coming up. It's good that Mike wasn't the only one.
Second motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, motion 4-0. We are now adjourned.